Can I get a thumbs up if everybody sees my screen? Awesome, great. And remember, if you want to ever click out of it, I know it goes directly to full screen mode. If you ever want to get out of it, just go ahead and double click anywhere or press the escape button, and it'll take you straight out. And you can see other applications. This is strategies for managing the online classroom, or just basically online classroom management. And I'm here with Anita Lavakumar. She's from BPS Technology. And I'm also here with Sarah Chang. She's newly back from back into OIT and BPS Technology, and she'll be joining us as well. She'll be observing. Great to see everybody here. And can everybody hear me okay? Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Awesome, great. So because this session is so small and there aren't that many people here, this is going to be kind of a discussion-based session. I want to go back and forth and get some of your ideas because we're here learning too. We are by no means masters of online learning or anything like that, but we do have some experience, and so we'd like to gather information from teachers as well, and and use what they've learned, because again, at OIT, I'm a former teacher. Sarah's a former teacher and Anita's a former teacher, and we all know what it's like to sit through PD that just is horrible. And so we really want to make it useful for you. Again, it's going to be kind of discussion based, so feel free to unmute yourself whenever you'd like if you want to ask a question. If you don't want to unmute yourself, that's fine. Anita's going to be manning the chat at the same time, so if you want to just post some questions in the chat and do it from through there, you're more than welcome to do it that way as well. Now, does anybody have any questions before we start? Alrighty, so here we go. Some housekeeping before we start. This webinar is being recorded. Okay, so you will be getting an email a few hours after the session is ended with a feedback form, a video, and some other useful resource links as well. So that'll be coming. Please fill out the feedback form that's going to be given in this email. That's going to be sent in the email, but it's also going to be coming more towards the end of the session in the chat. This is if you're interested in getting kind of credit or anything towards your MOU or any type of hours for PDPs. Please do this feedback form, because it's how we essentially it's the data that we need in order to facilitate and give you the credit that you need. It seems like everybody's already displaying their name on their Zoom, so that's fine. I don't have to go into that too much. You already introduced yourself in the chat. That's great. Okay, awesome. So let's keep on trucking. Agenda. So we're going to talk about why we're having this webinar. We're going to go through virtual classroom norms. We're going to go through some Zoom practices, confirming completed work. We're going to go through some password protocols, some cyberbullying tips, and some wrap up. So why this webinar? So in case you haven't noticed by now, teaching online is just a smidge different from teaching face-to-face. Just kidding. It's not just a smidge. It's completely different. It's really rough sometimes, and we totally get it. We realize that some people have just been thrown into the mix, and that's really a hard way to go about it. I would imagine, especially if you've been teaching for a number of years face-to-face and haven't touched the online realm. It's very different. Some things carry across and some things don't. So in this session, we really want to give you a foundation to help manage your online class, because just like a classroom, and we'll get into this, just like a regular classroom, you have to have control of it before the kids start learning. And it's the same way with online learning as well. And we're going to give you some useful strategies and tips in order to do that. All right, folks. So the first thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go to this Padlet, right? And if you don't, so what I want you to do is in your address bar, I want you to type this address down here. It's called bit.ly/cccpad. And I believe Anita's going to put it in the chat as well. And it's going to take you to this page. And folks, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and read this article. Thoughts on this article. After you're done reading, click anywhere to leave a few sentences about your thoughts. So what you're going to do is just read this article. It's going to bring you to the Art of Education, and it's going to bring you to an article that's called Creating Your Classroom Rules with Your Students for a Powerful Start of the Year. just take a look at it. You don't have to read it every single word, but just go ahead and glance over it if you can. Just gonna give you about 5 minutes and leave a couple sentences on what you think about the article. Anywhere in the Padlet, you can leave it here on the comment section, or you can just click anywhere and leave it as well. Okay. So again, we're reading this article, the Art of Education Benefits from Creating Classroom Expectations for Students. And I'm gonna give you guys about 5 minutes for this. And if you ever wonder how to get to a quick and easy timer, if you don't already have one already, you can just go to YouTube, go to 5-minute timer. They also have 10, 5, 2, 1. Awesome. And about a lot of other times. So it's really useful. Okay, folks are coming down to the last minute and 30 seconds. So if you can, if you're not finished with the article, don't worry about it, but just leave a couple sentences in the Padlet about what you thought of it and any comments or thoughts. Alrighty, and that's Q. So have some comments that were left in the chat and on the Padlet. Um so let's see. Melissa, did you have anything you wanted to say? You said you wrote something on in the chat, but you want to share with us what you wrote, what your thoughts were?
Oh, sorry, I was a little confused. Sorry, is the Padlet just what you're showing on the screen?
Yeah, but it's okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it was really just straightforward. I think
Mhm.
sometimes articles can be really dense.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I thought it was really
Especially education
straightforward.
articles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really straightforward and like reader friendly for like any learning style.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Like for those who are super academic or those who just like practical language.
Right. Right. Great. Awesome. And Evelyn? Evelyn, you
Uh,
there? You want to finish? You said had some. You wrote something about the chat about it having some solid steps.
yes, I want to finish reading it at some point, but I
Uh-huh.
thought it does offer some good tips to, lead teachers
Uh-huh.
in, to manage.
Right. Right.
Mm,
Awesome.
yeah.
Great. Right. Anybody else want to leave a couple? Anybody else have any thoughts about it? Alrighty, folks. So we'll go ahead and move forward then. Yeah. So yeah, it's so again, it emphasized um, uh, a need for having those classroom rules in place. Just like we would, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, just like we would with a regular classroom, right? And unfortunately, we're at the end of the year right now, so I know it's it's more applicable during the beginning of the school year, obviously, but and we're at the end of the school year. But having something in place that you can refer to constantly is really important for our students to know, just like we would have with our expectations in a physical classroom, where you have them posted right next to the door, right next to the chalkboard, right next to the writing board, where you constantly refer to them and constantly reinforce them. The same goes, that same type of concept applies to the virtual classroom as well. Right? It kind of gives you a place to go back to when you need to get control of your class, because like I'm sure, like we all learned in education school, you know a class has to be managed and controlled in order, and control can mean many things, obviously, but I mean there has to be management in place in order for learning to happen, and the same rule applies to the online environment as well. So again, and one of the ways we do the and again,
Mm.
I'm sorry, this promotes this idea of that learning time, that online learning time, when you're in front of the computer with your students and they're in front of the computer with you, right? That it's class. It's not gaming time. It's not YouTubing time. It's not entertainment time, and it's not always fun time, obviously. But I mean, it's time for class, and there needs to be a level of formality involved for students to really engage and embrace the idea that they're learning online. So setting classroom expectations and classroom norms reinforces the idea that it's class, that it's school, and it's time to learn. Right. And again, this can look different in a lot of ways. But again, it's this having these expectations brings that level of formality that needs to be uh, reinforced in order for students to learn. So again, establishing class rules and expectations is a very big deal. And a really popular idea that seems to be really working really well um, right now, as teachers are moving to the online teaching environment, is this idea of what's called a collaborative class contract, or CCC, right? And it's getting together with your students and letting them and coming up with rules for the online classroom experience together with them. And again, collaborating, obviously as a teacher you're going to be the last say, but again, you know really putting forth the notion that you're going to be learning, and that they're going to be learning with you, and that they have a say in establishing rules and expectations and um, routines for the online classroom environment. Again, it's hit home with a lot of students, and it's worked really well. So this again helps to clearly communicate the classroom expectations in a sort of living document, right? It doesn't always have to be as firmly established. It can change, it can evolve, right? And some things that you really need to consider are, just like you would in a regular classroom, safety needs to be the number one thing. right? Students need to understand that they're in a safe environment, that they're safe in a safe learning environment that's online. They're not going to be harassed or anything like that. Someone's not going to come in through a, you know, who's outside of the classroom and participate in your online environment. And, you know, unless that's what you want. But again, safety is the main concern. You know, when you understand, you know, letting them know that, you know, you're in control of your classroom and that you're doing the best you can to make it a safe learning environment. Also, things to consider as well are etiquette, or what I like to call netiquette. Right? So understand, pushing through this idea that, you know, it's class time, it's time to learn, and that students need to behave a certain way when they're in the online environment with you during class. Right, and you can refer to the ideas of digital footprint, that you know, the way that they act in class, you know, and the way that they act online is setting forth a precedent for them throughout their life on the net. And so understanding that there's a digital footprint in place, and that they establish a digital footprint while they're online is very key and fundamental to learning, and essentially just having a life online that, you know, which every student is going to have. Going through the idea of cheating, copy and pasting, plagiarism, understanding that, and how it's very easy for a lot of students to do this, and addressing that cheating will not go, you know, will not be tolerated in class. You can go through Zoom etiquette as well, being in, you know, to the best of their ability, being in a quiet space where, and a space that's free from other types of, some types of distractions or disturbances, whatnot. And understanding how to use a chat. And this is a big one for me, chatting with you or chatting with other students and whatnot. And really hitting home or reinforcing the idea that when students chat online, especially with the teacher, that there needs to be a level of formality involved. And I'm sure everyone has seen with sending text back and forth to each other, and text speech, or you know, chat speech, where there are a lot of emojis and acronyms and whatnot, and like and having words and whatnot that are uh, that are ground down to, you know, letters, simple letters. For example, saying, like, instead of writing the word C out, SEE, use the letter C. That this type of language doesn't really facilitate a positive learning environment, and doesn't really facilitate the level of formality that needs to be in place for the students to learn. And so using proper English when writing is really important, and really pushing this idea of formality to your students really helps in getting a hold of the classroom, and again, setting that level of formality that needs to be there in order for students to learn. Also, things to consider are times. You know, what times do students need to be in front of the computer? What times do they not? You know, what times are your breaks and whatnot? Understanding that everyone's on mute, or someone who's not on mute, and the class numbers and how many kids are going to be in your class, and who you're going to, you know, how many kids should be in class with you at that certain time. And this is all things that you can write in your collaborative classroom contract. These are all things that you can address. So, yep, this is, so when you come up with these virtual norms or these expectations for your online class, this is something that, again, really needs to be put in place. And again, we completely understand that it is towards the end of the year, and that it's really hard to put in place rules and rituals and routines and expectations towards the end of the school year. And we totally agree with that. But having something in place really is much better than having nothing. And again, as we move forward into the next school year, we don't know what learning is going to look like. So it's great to have this, at least, you know, in place, something in place, or you go into the next school year with this mindset that that rules, just like in a regular classroom, that rules and expectations need to be in place for the online learning environment. So again, ask your students what they need in order to participate, feel safe, and learn when you come up with this collaborative classroom contract. And what I'd like you to do now, we're going to do a little bit of an activity. I'd like you to go to this bit.ly. It's a Google Doc, and if Anita, if you can please put this web address inside the chat, really appreciate it. It's going to take you to a Google Doc, and that looks like this. And we want to know what some rules you think would be. What we want to know, what what you think would work effectively for your classroom in terms of rule setting expectations. And I have all the grade bands below. So feel free to write below your grade band. And again, this is a living document, and you feel free to go back to it whenever you'd like, if you would like to revisit. But what are some rules and expectations and norms that you think need to be in place? And folks will do this for another 5-6 minutes. Great, folks. I'm seeing some great ideas here. It seems like folks are on the roll here, so I'm going to go and give you guys a couple more minutes to do this. So give me about 2 more minutes. Nice. That's good stuff here. Folks, I'll give you another minute. Go till 10:30, and then we'll stop. Hold on. Great. Okay, folks, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in here and take a look at some of these. And these are all great. And I encourage you to come back and check out some of these ideas that came about from some of the teachers here that are on. One of the things that I really want to talk about too is I see this at the end, was ask your family to be near you to ask for help if needed. I think that's a great idea. I think asking students to if parents are available to, a lot of times students don't understand how to use the interface on Zoom or how to use some of the other or Google Classroom. And, in some cases it's really tough for the parents, but in some cases it's not. So, going to that, if that's possible, that'd be, it's a great idea. Another one that I saw in here that was really great is using the same language that you've used or the same type of ideas that you've already used throughout the class year, and if possible using that same language to reinforce some of the rules that you want to put in place, right? For example, like right here, it says kids have a lot of ideas about how Zoom class and at school class are similar in terms of making turns. Yeah, so play with that. Yes, definitely bring about that same type of language or those same type of concepts. And if you could apply it to the online classroom, by all means, it just makes that transition a lot easier. I think it's a really good idea. Who wrote that? Can someone talk about that a little bit more? If it doesn't say who wrote it, who actually wrote it. So. I can get to it, but if whoever
Hi.
wrote it, hi,
Hi.
Nancy, how are you?
King.
Hi, Nancy,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good. I deal with a lot of little kids, kindergarten,
Mhm.
first graders.
Mhm.
And I find when I remind them, like the same kid is rolling around on the rug at home who was rolling around on the rug at school,
Okay.
right? So their
Uh,
behaviors aren't that different sometimes.
right.
And
Right.
just reminding, if you were on the rug at school, how would you be sitting?
Yeah.
And then they rethink it. So I think it's just reminding them that you're not at home, you're at school
Right.
when you're on
Exactly.
Zoom.
Constantly reinforcing. Exactly.
And they get into that. They're kind of like, you can see them say to a little sister, I'm at school.
Interesting. Huh.
So,
Fascinating. Oh, okay. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for that. So folks, again, feel free to come back to this anytime you'd like. And again, setting those rules and expectations that, and again, I know it's towards the end of the school year and it's, really hard to start to do something like this. But again, just like Nancy mentions, if you can bring across some of those concepts that were already in place and find a place for them on the online environment, by all means do that. It's an easier transition, not only just for you, but for your students as well. Folks. So let's go ahead and get to the next part now. Okay, so that was a classroom contract, collaborative classroom contracts. And one of the things I want to talk about were Zoom practices. And if possible, to think about the idea of workshopping with your students. And by what I mean by workshopping is the education concept of essentially not talking to them or talking at them for the entire length of time that they're on in the Zoom environment. For example, if you're on with them for an hour and a half, to talk at a student for an hour and a half is really, really hard, not on just you as a teacher, but on students. I teach a college class at Bunker Hill, and it's a 3-hour college course that's once a week, and I can't even do that with my college students. They just, after 20 minutes, they lose me. And so you constantly have to throw other things in there for them to do. And the same thing goes for younger students as well. So if there's a possibility where you can actually workshop it and have that mini lesson and where you tell them exactly what they need to know, what they need to do, and let them work on their own in the online environment, by all means, please do that, because it's difficult for not just for you, but for students to be on for that long. Muting all, I'm sure it seems like most people understand how powerful being able to mute students it really is, and and I'll show you a way to turn off the unmute function. I'm sure a lot of you have gone to this already, but there might be some out there that haven't. Using the raise hand function. So yes, muting all the students, not allowing them to unmute themselves, and using the raise hand function just like they would take turns at school. That's idea seems to really work. It works with us too as well when we have 40 or more students, 40 or more session participants. We mute everybody and don't allow them to unmute themselves, and they raise their hands. The classroom numbers. So if you want to have breakout sessions, and so assigning students different the numbers, I'm sorry, different numbers of students to different breakout rooms, works out really well. 2, placing students on hold. So if a student, if it be that a student is something's going on, something's happening in their Zoom their Zoom video, if they're misbehaving in any way, there you can also as a host on Zoom, you can actually put a student into a hold room where you can go and address any kind of need any of their needs individually. If all else fails and the student is acting up, or you can't have them in, you just don't, they just something's going on with the student that can't be fixed. There's always the option for removing a student and then talking to them, him or her later on. Having a waiting room at the beginning of class as well is really important. It's really powerful too, because it's kind of like when you're teaching a class, you're standing by the door. That waiting room is kind of like standing by the door. You're allowing every student to come in and enter that psychological space where this is classroom time. That's a different place outside in the hallway. You're in my class now, and having that waiting room function and allowing them to come in and accepting them is kind of like that whole standing by the door door tactic that we use in the classroom. And then also realizing that at any point, if anything goes horribly awry with your class, that you can always press the eject button and just end the meeting. That's always a possibility. And and this has happened, more than a few times with this here at BPS, because students don't understand how they look on camera, or they don't understand who's in the background or what's happening in the background. And if it be the case where something is completely where there's a situation that you can't, there's a situation that you absolutely cannot address, you can always just press the eject. And this is a last resort, right? Pressing, you can always end the meeting as well. So just things to think about as we move forward. Really powerful place to find some of the things I was talking about here are in your participants menu. So if you click on participants, and you can't see it right now, unfortunately, because you're not the host of the meeting. But when you are the host of the meeting, if you click on participants and you go to the bottom and you click on the more button, a drop-down menu will appear. And the drop-down menu looks like this on the left. Muting participants upon entry. I'm sorry about that. It keeps going back and forth on me. Allowing participants to unmute themselves. That's a really powerful option right here, or checkbox. If you don't want to allow the students to unmute themselves, you would just click on this menu option, and it'll be unchecked, and students have to remain unmuted until you unmute them. I'm sorry, students will remain muted until you unmute them. This one also allowing participants to remain themselves. So again, setting forth that expectation that you need the proper name and that no silliness can go on. So, and this is how you can name them yourselves here, or you can allow them to put their own name in, and then you can uncheck it so students will no longer be able to rename themselves the meeting as well. And you can also lock the meeting too. So if you have all your students in place, the only time you would want to lock a meeting, and that's when you don't want to let anyone else to join, is when when you have all your students accounted for and they're in the meeting. Not really a useful tool, not really a useful option, again, but it's there just in case. All right. So folks, again, that's that more button at the bottom of the participants list when you're a Zoom host. Folks, I'm going to stop it here for questions. Does anybody have any questions or any things that they want to talk about, or any ideas? Alrighty, folks, and how are we looking in the Zoom chat? Anita, everything okay?
Yeah, everything's good.
Okay. So, all right, folks, so the next section I want to head to is confirming work, because this was mentioned a little bit earlier, and it's been mentioned in other webinars, but I know someone mentioned it a little bit earlier today too, in terms of cheating, and understanding that in the online world, especially if you're not, on the internet, it's very, very easy for students to cheat. Way easier to cheat now than it was when I was in school, and some of the built-in, operating system options like cut and paste or copy and paste, can present teachers with a world of hurt in terms of plagiarism and cheating. Right. So one of the things that I wanted to go over today was the ways that you can do this using Google, ways you can mitigate this, and using some of the Google tools that are already in place with us as BPS teachers. And so, as BPS teachers, we have access to our Google Suite, which is essentially a souped up version of a regular Google account, but we have endless. We have infinite. We have again bottomless storage. We can store as many things as we want on our Google Drives, and this is more towards the Google side of things. So if you're not that familiar with Google, please come to our Google 101 courses or basic G Suite Basics webinar, and we'll go over that. We'll go over some of the basics with it. But this applies more towards the people who know how to use Google Docs and Google Classroom a little more. And so one of the things that you can do when you want to verify student work, so suppose that you have an assignment on Google Classroom and you assigned every student an individual document, all right? Now, if you assign a student to do an individual document, they can share that with any other person that they want to, right? Or they can have, they can share the link or they can share it with another student. And this is just because it's on default, it allows them to do that because it's a Google Doc, right? Now, one of the way, and they can also cut and they can also paste. They can do a bunch of things on Google to go to the internet. And if you're assigning an essay, they can get an essay from somewhere and cut and paste it in there. And so it's easy to cheat via Google Docs, but it's also very powerful in terms of how you can confirm that students are doing their own work as well. So I'm going to go back to our Google Doc. And one of the ways that you can check for cheating and check to see exactly who wrote what is if you go to File, and it's what's called your version history, right? I'm going to go to my version history, and in here, it's going to show me everybody who has made any type of edit to the original document that I put in place, right? So, for example, if you have a student who has shared other work shared an assignment, for example, a Google Doc with someone and has asked someone to collaborate with him or her, even though that wasn't allowed, you can go to the version history and check out to see who wrote what, right? And so, like for example, I'll click on this. Click on this, right? And here it shows me at the certain times that things were made and things were done, right? So at 9 o'clock, this was completely blank, right? And it'll show me everything that's crossed out, right? And it'll show me at 10:27 who did what to it, right? So it says Miranda Logarin, and she's in green. She's a green. She did this work right here, raising your hand, and David, sorry, an anonymous person did this one up here. Melissa Rogers did the work in red. It shows me exactly who did what and at what time. And you'd be surprised how powerful this could be. Also, too, if it be the case that at 1 second, and yes, some students do some work that's offline and they cut and paste the entire thing into a Google Doc, that could totally be the case. But if it's writing that doesn't sound like the student at all, maybe it's very formal, or it doesn't sound like this person wrote it, you can always check to see if a cut and paste has been done at it, because you'll eventually see you'll have something blank like I had, right? And then you'll see a bunch of work that came in 2 or 3 minutes later, 1 or 2 minutes later. Now, obviously, again, they could have cut and paste from their own offline work. That's fine. But again, if it looks fishy, it sounds fishy, maybe it doesn't sound, that's something that you can investigate yourself. And so this is just one of the ways that you can use Google Docs. You can use the version history in Google Docs to confirm work that's been done by the actual student if you're using Google Docs. You can also do the same thing in Google Slides as well. So if you sign a Google Slide deck, a Google Slide deck also has that same feature of version history as well. So that's just one of the ways that you can tackle cheating in class. One of the other ways you can do it is through a plagiarism checker, or a lot of them. There's some free ones out there. Just note that if you use a free plagiarism checker, it probably has ads all over it. But for the most part, they do. They work pretty well. And if you just know not to click on the ads, it could be a pretty powerful tool for checking plagiarized work. So what you would do essentially is just enter any work that you think that you want to check to make sure that it hasn't been plagiarized, and click on check plagiarism. And this is for Dupla Checker. Now again, right here, you can see all the different ads that are around it. Don't click on those because they'll send to different websites. But this, again, for a free, simple on the fly check, this is a great way to look for things. Look for plagiarism if you suspect it. Alrighty, so that's Google Tools, and that's plagiarism, and that's the verifying student work section. Some other things that you have to consider too are password protocols that are in place. Because you're the teacher now, and you may get questions regarding student passwords. So by default, some students by default, most students have been issued a password for their Google BPS sign-in. That's their birth date. That's the month, date, and year. Okay, so you have to reinforce the idea that please, don't share passwords. And if it be the case that you get a question about a student who, I'm sorry, if you get an inquiry about from a student about their passwords being lost, you can always go to SIS, check their birth date, and have them try their day, month, and year birth date as a password. If that doesn't work, call 617-635-9200, and it'll work to get it. We'll work to get that password to you. But this whole idea of password sharing and password protocols is good, not just for online learning, but it is for life as well. Again, understanding how passwords are so important moving forward, with a life online, and how security is such a big an issue that just keeps on growing as the years go on. Beware that some of the things that have been happening that we've been noticing at OIT is that students are sharing passwords. So people are signing as other people, and doing bad things. And so if you suspect this is happening, again, call the 617-635-9200 number. Right. Before we move on to our last session, do we have any questions or any comments or concerns? Nina, how are we looking in the chat?
Yeah, okay? The chat seems great. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So folks, I'm going to go to the last section now. We're going to go to cyberbullying versus digital drama versus out of context. This is, now that students aren't with each other anymore, they're doing a lot more texting and a lot more chatting with each other online. And so, there's a lot of their social outlets are moving online now. And so, in case you haven't noticed, life via text is difficult, especially when you don't have especially because you don't have a person in front of you anymore to talk to. You do, but because Zoom and because of Google Hangouts, it's limiting to one person to two people at a time. It's not as if a student can see 5 or 6 of their friends at the same time anymore. It's very difficult. And so it's hard to communicate in person, let alone just through text, right? So because you don't. Right now, if students are chatting with each other, texting each other, they're not seeing the gestures, they're not seeing they don't see the facial expressions, they don't hear the intonation, and it's hard to really understand sometimes what a person's trying to say just through text and writing. And so a lot of this leads to some of this leads to cyberbullying, and some of this leads to digital drama, and some of this leads to complete things being just taken completely out of context. So sometimes students take things out of that they chats and texts completely out of context, and adults do it too. So just think about students. And so verifying and understanding if a student comes to you with with an idea that he or she might be cyberbullied, this is something to really take into consideration and go over with them, right? Or could it just be digital drama? And just like students have just a regular tiffs with their oh, I don't like the way he's dressed today, or I don't like the way he's acting, I don't like the way he talked to me, but it's not necessarily a big deal. Is it just digital drama? Is this something that was taken again completely taken at a wrong level, or is it taken completely out of context, or is it just digital drama? Is it just the everyday tiffs that students have with each other? Right? Or is it legitimate cyberbullying? Is the student getting harassed constantly online by the same person? Is a person being constantly harangued? Has it gone to that level? And if it has, it's really important that you understand the steps that they need to take and that you need to take as well. So understanding that if it's a confirmed case of cyberbullying, that student needs to collect data and that you need to collect data and to establish a paper trail. And you also have to notify all the necessary personnel. Notify mom and dad, notify the principal, notify the social worker. And if it gets to that case where it's nonstop, encouraging the student to unplug completely from the social media app or the app that's causing the cyberbullying, the app that's being used to do the cyberbullying, and then eventually getting the authorities involved. And a good place to understand and learn more about what's happening with cyberbullying now with COVID and whatnot is to go to commonsensemedia.com/cyberbullying. It's a great resource for cyberbullying, and Common Sense Media is the gold standard in terms of education technology and digital citizenship and cyberbullying. So I encourage you, if you want to know more about it, they have grade band activities, they have age appropriate activities, and it's just a great resource to learn more about cyberbullying and the things we can do to stop it and the things we can do to mitigate it as well. So this is, again, all part of the classroom management approach to online learning. Does anybody have any questions or any ideas or any thoughts? I see that someone's trying to talk, but no. How are we doing in the chat, Anita?
Totally fine, Nick.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, folks. Great. Again, we encourage you to go to Common Sense Media if you're interested in learning more about cyberbullying. We're going to be throwing webinars pretty soon that cover cyberbullying a little bit more in depth. But if you want to find out more about it right now, please, we encourage you to go to commonsensemedia.com/cyberbullying. Okay, so some final housekeeping. Please fill out, Anita's gonna, if you can you put the attendance form into the chat, and the feedback form too. I'm sorry, it's actually the same thing, the attendance/feedback form in the chat. And if you can, please fill it out. We'd really appreciate it. And again, if you need any type of confirmation in terms of your credit and PDPs and whatnot, again, you need to fill out this feedback form. We also have aside for future webinars and former webinars, for future webinars and office hours, as well as a list of videos of the webinars that we've already thrown, we've already given. That will be put in the chat as well. So thank you so much for attending. We'll end a little bit early today. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them now. But if not, we'll go ahead and end it early. Let me see. I'll go to the chat right now and see if everybody's okay. Great.
Melissa just asked about cyberbullying issues during this closure and if OIIT is working on these topics. So I just posted back to her, but Melissa, we do have a webinar that we can do on cyberbullying, but we're also looking to team up with other areas in BPS to create a more robust webinar for folks going forward. So yeah, so keep a watch for those.
Yeah, definitely. And Melissa, so true. They're going to be out pretty soon. We are definitely collaborating. But there are certain things that are done at a district level that I'd be happy to send you. It's through BPS. It's through Boston Public Schools at the district level, and there are a number of different organizations and different resources that they have available for teachers. And I actually go to it right now. Let me Google.
Yeah, and Melissa also cited Succeed Boston, and I think that's a great one. I think you can get there through TeachPoint as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Or I think it's anti-bullying. Let's pause it. Yeah, here we go. Here's some really good resources for cyberbullying and for some of the programs that the district has in place. Not necessarily cyberbullying per se, but it's just bullying. But cyberbullying falls under bullying. So yeah, you can essentially use all of them, most of these resources in a cyberbullying situation.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else have any questions before we end? All right, folks, great. It was great having you. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. So we're going to go ahead and end the meeting now if no one else has any questions. Thanks to everyone again for joining and appreciate you coming, and stay classy, Boston.
Please make sure you fill out that feedback form so you can receive credit for attending the webinar.
Great, folks. Have a good one, everybody. Ciao.
Bye.